Welcome back. It's time to review the front pages of our national dailies. We'll start with Daily Trust. 30 die, many injured in Kano Road accident. That's on page 7 of the Daily Trust newspaper. U.S. Nigerian travels deep amidst visa ban entry restrictions. And that's on page 23 of the Daily Trust newspaper if you want more on that story. Electoral bill, NLC threatens mass action. That's on pages 3 and 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Uromi killings, Edo yet to pay compensation 11 months after, and that's on page 7 of the Daily Trust newspaper. IPOP ends sit at home in Southeast. You can read the story on page 27 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Reptiles take over FCT Health Center, and that's on page 30 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And lastly, on the Daily Trust, attacks on police facilities kill 45 officers in 1 year. That's on pages 5 and 6 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Grab yourself a copy and stay informed. And next up, we have Daily Sun. Insecurity, tension in Kogi, Niger State. Market, motor parks shut across 7 local government areas in Kogi were under siege. Niger communities cry out, and that's on page 6 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Cost of medicines soar, defy federal government's cost-cutting framework. That's on page 29 of the Daily Sun newspaper. No more Monday sit at home. Kano orders IPOP, and that's on page 6 of the Daily Sun newspaper. We also have NBA president raises alarm over rot in judiciary, and that's on page 6 of the Daily Sun newspaper, Pope asks Tinubu to protect Nigerians, and that's on page 8 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Dangote Cement vows to make Africa self-sufficient in cement production. That's on page 27 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Enugu government grows IGR to 406.7 billion naira, targets 870 billion naira in 2026. And tax revenue accounts for 12.6%. Non-tax contributes 87.4%. And that's on page 25 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Grab yourself a copy to stay informed. And next up, we move to the Guardian newspaper. We have T-bills see over 400% demand spike as manufacturers face credit squeeze. And that's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Still on the Guardian, we have outcry grows over e-transmission ahead of Senate emergency session, and that's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. BOI secures CBN's approval for non-interest banking, and that's on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper if you want more on that story. And POP mourns victims of attacks in Nigeria, urges government to protect citizens, and that's on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Atiku, no economic signs in reviving failed refineries after $1.5 billion. That's on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. And lastly, as echoed on other newspapers, IPOP Kano cancelled Monday sit-at-home order. And that's on page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. All right, joining us to review the front pages of our national dailies is Dr. Suleiman, former chairman, editorial board, Daily Trust newspaper. Thank you for joining us today. All right, let's start up from home. Daily Trust. Electoral bill, NLC threatens mass action. We have seen so far concerning the electoral bill, the Nigerians are saying that there are omissions, and and they still don't understand why the Senate is not approving that these results should be transmitted electronically. So please, let's hear your thoughts on this.
Well, it's the most important thing is when people are talking about mass action, because that's necessary to make the government aware that this is an important issue for Nigeria. And it's not just about this government, because every government in Nigeria has maximum of 8 years. So, but the systems are designed to endure beyond the life of a given government. So we had, in the past few 10 years or so, there have been significant improvements in our electoral systems. And one of these major improvements is the idea of using technology to improve our elections. So, and we did it the last election in 2003, and by and large it worked, you know. Or we had glitches on the presidential election, yes, but by and large it worked, you know. And even now, as I speak, if you go to the IRF portal, all the data concerning all the elections are still there. So we did something once and it worked, you know. And then just after that, because you now have a different government in place, and then we are not going to do it again, please, even to an ordinary citizen, what does that mean? It means we're going backwards, you know. So I'm happy to hear that concerned Nigerians and civil society organizations and labor saying they want a mass action on this, because it took time. Don't forget that electoral reform started in Nigeria in 2007, when the late President Yar'Adua came on and then constituted the Waste Committee, and then they started. So it was a long process, a lot of work, a lot of people, a lot of organizations involved before we get to where we are now, you know. And you also know how much effort it took to pass the 2022 Electoral Act, you know. And then suddenly we're now, because we just have a new Senate and then a whole new executive, and then we're going to roll all of that back just because you have a government that at most they can have 2 terms, and that's the end of it. I don't think it makes sense. Okay. What this means for the government is, if the government really wants to win election, and every government will want to do that, and you have to grant them that, it's to sell themselves to Nigerians as they did before. You know, they don't have to tamper with the electoral system to do it. Yes. All right,
let's take a look at this headline. IPOB ends sit at home in Southeast. As we know, you know, the IPOB was something that a lot of people in the Southeast had the issue with, because Mondays were like, you're grounded, you're not going anywhere, you're going to be at home, children could not go to school, offices were not opening, you know, both shops and people that had, you know, shops in the market. But now we're getting, you know, this report is saying that starting from today, you know, the sit-at-home is no longer going to be active in the Southeast. I mean, it's a good news if we are to say that. But then, what is your take on this, being that the leader of the IPOB is in prison, and then, you know, there have been a lot of controversies concerning his case, and also the sit-at-home in the Southeast?
I think, I'll be honest, the governor there, Professor Charles Soludo, whom I approve of, and of the work that he does, particularly the work that he had done before in the federal government as CBN governor, I think he mishandled the situation in the first place. You know, he saw it simply as a matter of decree, that if I say let the markets open, then the markets will be open because I am governor. But the issue went beyond that, because personal safety and public safety was involved. A lot of people who were staying at home weren't staying at home necessarily because they supported IPOB, but they stayed at home because they were afraid of the violence that would be inflicted on them by IPOB members, either on their persons or on their properties, so they stayed at home. I think the engagement between the governor and the market people should have started from that point, you know, rather than just come to the market and say, oh, I order all of you to come and open your own shops every Monday, without understanding the reasons why they weren't opening in the first place. So now that they are opening, when I saw the story yesterday, I just thought that, okay, maybe the governor now realizes that this is a matter for negotiation, is a matter for engaging with people, rather than a matter of decree, and that he has gone back to the drawing board to talk to people, to engage with them, and then find lasting solutions that will definitely include how to secure the lives and properties of those who open, because that was the crucial issue in the first place. It's not like people were interested or were so happy with IPOB, that's why they were closing their shops. They were doing so because they feared for their own lives and they feared for their own property, you know, which the governor could not guarantee. So maybe I think they have reached some kind of agreement now, and I think that's better. I don't really see this has much connection with the IPOB leader who is in prison, because he's not in prison for political reasons. He's in prison for legal reasons. He's in prison because he was found guilty by a court of law. So you can see that's a different issue, to the best of my knowledge. And it is not that the market people were all IPOB supporters, even if they do support so nominally, but not necessarily IPOB members and not part of the wider IPOB organizations. So certainly I don't see how this affects, there are two separate things. Yeah.
Okay, quickly, I think we have 2 minutes left. Let's take a look at this headline. U.S. Nigerian travels deep amidst visa ban, entry restrictions. Quickly, what's your take on this?
Nigeria what?
Okay, U.S. Nigeria travels deep amidst visa ban, entry restriction. So you know that the U.S. Nigerian air travel has been negatively impacted by increasingly restrictive U.S. visas and immigration rules, now which includes, curtailed visa validity, stricter entry requirements, and outright suspensions on certain categories of Nigerian travelers. So this report was done by our own reporter here, and it states that, President Donald Trump had imposed stricter visa rules and outright visa ban, on Nigerians.
Frankly, these issues are quite interesting. First of all, it's not a Nigerian issue. When the U.S. issue such restrictions, they affect not just Nigeria as a country, but several other countries that are in similar conditions, with Nigeria. I think they are just a warning to us to also get our own acts in order, to what do people go to do in the U.S.? Most of the travel is not business related, frankly. Most of the travel is for seeking greater opportunities, for visiting relatives, for school, for health, and things like that. So if we improve our own systems around here, chances are that we'll get to a point where the U.S. will even be looking for Nigerians that will be traveling there, and they won't find too many, because most of the things that people go there to do, they already have.
All right, thank
here.
you, Dr.
Suleiman
Suleiman, for joining us this morning to review the front pages of our national dailies. On this note, we'll call it a wrap.